Jose Berrios might not be on the mound when this season begins. And that's not exaggeration. That's a real possibility. We spent the entire winter talking about revenge, about getting back to the World Series, about finishing what was left hanging after 7 games against the Los Angeles Dodgers. The American League banner goes up, the Rogers Center is electric. The whole country buys into the idea that 2026 is the final step. And in the middle of all that, Berrios' name starts circulating in trade talks. Not random noise, not empty speculation, published analysis, real discussion. People arguing that moving Berrios before opening day might actually be the logical play. Hold on a second. We're talking about a starter who made 30 starts in 2025, threw 166 innings, finished 9-5 with a 4.17 ERA, 1.30 WIP, and a 2.5 K/B ratio. That's not a disaster. That's not elite. It's uneven. And that's where the discomfort begins. In 2024, it was a different story. 16-11, 3.60 ERA, 1.15 WIP, nearly 193 innings. Top of the rotation rhythm for long stretches. The version of Berrios who looked worth every dollar. The one who took the ball without drama. But 2025 brought back the volatility, the inconsistency that never fully leaves the conversation when his name comes up. And then there's the part that divided the fan base. Mark Powell from Fansided floated a proposal connecting the Blue Jays and the Minnesota Twins. The logic? Toronto doesn't really need Berrios anymore. Minnesota desperately needs arms. He didn't sugarcoat it. Berrios stayed away while his teammates were competing for a World Series title. He apologized later, but the image lingered. And that matters. It's not just ERA, not just WIP. It's perception, timing, the internal narrative of a clubhouse that was one win away from history. Let's slow this down, because this isn't simple. The Twins have real rotation issues. Pablo Lopez is out long-term, Joe Ryan is dealing with a back injury, and Minnesota, under this ownership group, isn't exactly known for spending big. Berrios has just 1 year left on his contract, financially manageable, a reunion with the organization that drafted him. For Minnesota, he's experienced depth, a starter capable of giving you 6 competitive innings. In today's market, reliable pitching is currency. For Toronto, the question shifts. Do they actually need him? Look at the rotation as constructed. This team reached the World Series last year. The pitching structure carried them. Even with individual ups and downs, the collective worked. So why change it? Because sometimes the decision isn't about need, it's about efficiency. If the front office believes Berrios is somewhat redundant, moving him now could bring strategic return, prospects, financial flexibility, or pieces that matter more in October. But this is where it gets complicated. Trading a starter who makes 30 turns a year is never minor. The season is long, injuries happen, performance dips. Depth feels like a luxury until it isn't. And what if the issue isn't Berrios, but margin for error? The ALM isn't easier. The path back to October demands stability. Stability isn't built by subtracting durable arms without a clear replacement. There's also the emotional layer. This core carried Canada to a World Series. The Rogers Center wasn't just loud, it felt national. Moving a meaningful piece now sends a message. Is it supreme confidence in the structure, or quiet course correction? Let's be honest, Berrios has never been universally embraced here. There have been dominant nights. There have been games where his command vanished and the fastball caught too much plate. The kind of roller coaster that has fans gripping their Tim Hortons coffee a little tighter. But he's durable, and durability matters. 166 innings in 2025, nearly 200 in 2024. That doesn't grow on trees, especially when October demands fresh arms. Now pause, because here's the detail that shifts everything. The contract. It's the final year. That changes the equation entirely. If the organization doesn't see a long-term extension, keeping him through the season could mean losing value. Trading now maximizes return. Waiting until the trade deadline? That depends. If he starts hot, the price rises. If he's inconsistent, the market cools. This is risk management. And Toronto knows risk. The payroll is heavy. The championship window is open right now. Every move feels amplified when you're one win away from finishing the job. Technically speaking, Berrios brings pitch mix depth, playoff experience, and the ability to absorb innings. He's not an ace. He's not a back-end placeholder. He lives in that middle tier that quietly shapes seasons. Minnesota sees immediate need. Toronto sees potential redundancy. But redundancy turns into security when someone's shoulder tightens in June. We've seen that movie before. The clubhouse dynamic matters too. His absence during the final push became public. He apologized. The group moved forward. But was there a lingering scar? Or was that noise magnified externally?
No one outside that room truly knows, and that uncertainty may be exactly why the front office is exploring options. There's symbolism here as well. Sending Berrios back to the Twins would complete a circle. Minnesota solves a pitching shortage. Toronto reallocates resources. But does the return justify thinning your depth on a title-caliber roster? Because 2026 isn't about making the playoffs, it's about finishing. If a rotation injury happens in August, who steps in? Who eats 108 innings? Those questions don't trend on social media. They get asked in executive offices. There's also the psychological factor. After losing a 7-game World Series, the instinct is to adjust something, anything, that feels imperfect. Sometimes that adjustment is necessary. Sometimes it's collective impatience. So, how do you view Berrios? As a movable asset, or still a necessary piece? Statistically, 2025 was average. A 4.17 ERA doesn't anchor a staff, but it doesn't sink it either. 2024 showed a higher ceiling, and at 31, there's still fuel left. Now the uncomfortable question. If he starts 2026 strong and he's gone, how does that look? If you keep him, any inconsistency returns, did you miss your timing? There isn't a comfortable answer. Minnesota is addressing need. Toronto is evaluating optimization. A deal only happens if both sides believe they're solving something real. For the Twins, it's arms. For the Jays, it might be roster balance. But trimming depth on a contender is never casual. What we know is straightforward. Berrios has a track record of volume, 1 year left on his deal, a 2025 season that regressed from 2024. Minnesota needs pitching. Toronto might feel positioned to move him. Comfort in February is not the same as security in September. And Rogers Center doesn't want comfort, it wants a trophy. If a trade happens before opening day, it signals internal confidence in the remaining rotation. If it doesn't, maybe they're waiting for deadline leverage. Or maybe nothing materializes at all. But the fact that it's even being discussed tells you this front office isn't passive. That can be strength, or impatience. The margin is thin, so I'll leave it here. Do you move Berrios before the season starts, or do you hold and trust the depth? Because that decision says everything about how Toronto views 2026, and 2026 doesn't forgive small mistakes. Let's hear it.